want to start. She is so quick on the button. All right, I agree to give my first child to Zoom. Got it. Okay, here we go. Get my gavel out, make it official. And good afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and call this session of the City of Lake Stevens Hearing Examiner to order. For the record, today is March 10th, 2022 at 3 p.m. We have one item on the agenda this afternoon. This is number LUA 2021-0201, involving a request for approval of a major plat alteration to the Vinje Hill Estates preliminary plat and planned residential development, or PRD, that was previously approved by me, I believe, back on April 19 of 2021 under permit number LUA 2019-0176. And the alterations proposed would include changes to access for various lots and tracks, a reduction in the total amount of open space provided within the preliminary plats, and various other lot layout and configuration changes. My name is Andrew Reeves. I'm a hearing examiner with Sound Law Center, who the city has selected to hold certain land use application hearings like this one. And today it will be my role to collect evidence in the form of exhibits and testimony to determine whether this proposal complies with the city's comprehensive plan, zoning ordinances, critical areas ordinances, and the specific requirements for approval of a plat alteration under section 1418.060 of the Lake Stevens Municipal Code. And because it does involve a plat, ensure that it also complies with our state's Subdivision Act, which is chapter 5817 of the Revised Code of Washington. Although the requirements for alterations are pretty barren in terms of state law. So really we'll be focused on Lake Stevens code today. So to that end, I received 14 exhibits in advance of the hearing that I had an opportunity to review. These include a staff report prepared by city staff, information on the previous approval that occurred, including the decision that was issued back in April of 2021, the request to alter the plat along with the sort of new proposed plat documents were part of the review. Sort of back and forth between city staff and the applicant team on the proposal and requirements, ensuring everything gets addressed. Information on the environmental review that occurred under the State Environmental Policy Act, or SEPA, including an addendum that was issued to the earlier issued MDNS, or mitigated determination of non-significance, related to this proposal. Information on the notice that went out in relation to the application, as well as today's hearings. One comment, I believe, that was received in advance of the hearing from an interested neighbor, and then some information on significant trees on site, as well as a requested deviation under the engineering standards, or EDS, in the city that was granted. So those are the 14 exhibits I reviewed in advance of the hearing. Should anyone have additional exhibits they would like admitted into the record, let me know when it's your opportunity to testify, and I'll go ahead and address admitting additional exhibits at that time. Speaking of testimony, our testimony today will be under oath or affirmation. That's because were my decision to be appealed under our state's Land Use Petition Act, or LUPA, the recording of today's hearing, as well as the admitted exhibits, and my decision would serve as the foundation for any such appeal. I may and often do ask questions of those that are testifying, not trying to trip anyone up, just trying to ensure I have a thorough understanding of the proposal, so that within 10 business days of the record closing, I'm able to produce a decision that is hopefully clear and legally defensible. Finally, the order that we typically follow, and I believe we're going to follow today, is first we'll hear from city staff, who will provide an overview of the proposal and the review process that occurred leading up to today's hearing. Then I'll turn it to our applicant team to present any additional information they feel that myself or members of the public should be aware of in advance of any decision being made on this proposal. Then we'll check in and see if members of the public are interested in testifying. Before we came on the record, I tried to get a sense of who was in the room, and I believe we have at least a couple members of the public that are present. So I'll check in with them at that point in the hearing, and if they are interested, they will have an opportunity, as I stated, to testify. And then at the end, if necessary and appropriate, I'll turn it back to the applicant team and then city staff to respond to any such testimony. So that's the order we're going to follow. We're going to essentially keep folks muted until called upon to testify. That's to ensure we don't have any crosstalk or other issues in terms of using remote meeting technology. But I also note that were we all in the same room together, I wouldn't let everyone yell at each other or talk over each other anyway. So we try to keep the process as similar as possible. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started, and I'll get Melissa Place sworn in. Great. Thank you for being here. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
Thank you. And could you just spell your name for the audio recording and explain your role here at the city?
Sure. Melissa Place, MELISSA I'm a senior planner with the City of Lake Stevens, and I'll be presenting the staff report for the project today.
Great. Thank you for being here. Go right ahead. And first off, did the exhibits that I identified, does that track with what you had?
It does. I just wanted to add that we had received a public comment this Tuesday in addition to the 14 exhibits you have. So we were going to make that exhibit 15. And I believe that you were emailed it, but if you didn't receive it, let me know. I can pull it up and show it on my screen during the presentation.
I suspect that it did come to my office. I will admit I did not review it in advance of the hearing. It's been a hectic week, but we will include it as Exhibit 15.
Okay.
And if you could at some point just touch on the sort of what it was about, we'll make sure it's in the record so I can further review it. But if you can fit that into your presentation at some point, that'd be great.
Yes, it's already included a little summary in the presentation, and yeah, we can talk about it during this hearing. So I will go ahead if you're okay and just start. I have a PowerPoint prepared, and it's very brief. So just to give the highlights of the project.
Great. Did you want that included as an exhibit, or?
That would be fine if you would like to include it as Exhibit 16.
Yeah, let's do that. So we'll make the staff PowerPoint Exhibit 16, and I will quit interrupting you and let you proceed with your presentation, Ms. Place.
You're not interrupting me, but thank you. Okay, so can everyone see that? If you can't, please let me know.
Yep.
Okay, so this is the public hearing for the Vinje Hill Estates plat alteration under LUA 2021-0201, and today is March 10th, 2022. So the Vinje plat was a preliminary plat that was approved back in April of 2021. It's for 23 lots, and it's a subdivision located off of 71st Avenue Southeast in Lake Stevens. The property size is roughly 9.85 acres, and access is proposed off of 71st Avenue Southeast and 72nd Street Southeast. So the project is vested because of the application that was determined complete at the time of submittal back in 2021. It's vested to our urban residential zoning, which has now become our R6 zoning. And then it's also vested to previous PRD approval criteria. The lots that are proposed range in size from roughly 5,800 square feet to 7,400 square feet. There are 2 wetlands and 1 type F stream that are to be preserved in tracts on the plat. And this is just an aerial, gives you a little overview of where this is located. To the west, you can see Highway 204. And then this road that comes off of 204 is 71st Avenue. That'll be one of the accesses to the lots that are proposed right off of that. And this is a Caballero Ridge development, this existing development. And you can see 72nd Avenue Southeast. The proposed road in the plat will also access lots into the interior of the plat off of 72nd Avenue Southeast. So the plat alteration is for a number of changes to the plat. These bullet points here are the primary changes that are noted. There are a number. There's actually a summary that what the applicant included for us, and it's in the staff report. But the major changes right here is that it revises the access location for tract 995, revises locations and dimensions for various lots. It removes a shared driveway to the original lots of lots 11 and 12. Road B, which is one of the internal roads, the center line shifted 4 feet to the south, so they had to adjust a number of lots due to that. And tract 994 added a panhandle access to lots 21 through 23. And then all of these details are provided in Exhibit 4C to the staff report. The background is that this application, specifically the alteration application, was received back in December of 2021. And then the city did issue a notice of application for that on December 30th. The city did issue an addendum to the SEPA February 28th, just last month of this year. And then this public hearing that we're having today, the notice for it was issued on February 28th, and today is March 10th, and we're holding the hearing. So I just included this exhibit. This is the prior approved P-Plat. And so for me, and I don't know for others, it really helped to kind of toggle back and forth between the approved P-Plat and then the proposed to kind of really see what the changes are. And as you can see on the left, well, the west side essentially of this plat, this is the open space tract 995 in the northwest corner. And then south of that are lots 1 through 4 that are taking access off of 71st. And then in here, you've got your road A and road B, and you can see wetland, which is in the middle, and then wetlands in the northeast corner, and some open space. And if I go to the next slide, which is the proposed alteration, you can see the difference there in the northwest corner of the tract where there's going to be access now into that tract. And then you can also see down towards, let's see, the end of the cul-de-sac, there's now an access provided to those lots off of there. And I can go back again. You can really kind of see some of the changes. And you can see road B's center line shifted slightly. The orientation of the lots to the west of wetland B, which is that middle wetland, changed. You can see how they had driveways and accessing off of that. And then now lots 10 and 11 are accessing directly off of 72nd Street. I can zoom in if folks need to as well, but really it was intended to kind of show the difference between the preliminary plat approval and then this proposed plat and the changes, because there are a number of changes, and so you kind of have to look at them individually, but just glancing at between the two, you can really start to see those changes. So the plat alteration process is a type 3 because it was determined by city staff and the director as a major long plat alteration, because it did change some major things, which is open space and the location of the access. But a major plat alteration is subject to the same level of review as the original plat approval, which is why we're here today before the hearing examiner, because it does require a public hearing and a decision. So the public comments we received on this, we did receive 2 written public comments to the project. The first public comment did just ask for the locations of the files and wanted to see the project files on the website, and city staff did respond to that. The second comment is the email that I referred to earlier, and is going to be exhibit 15 to the staff report. With this public comment we received via email on Tuesday, and this is just a summary of what the concerns are. That believes there were several lots that are located on a peat bog or unpermitted fill, that there are concerns about traffic and parking impacts from construction vehicles and access for emergency vehicles and school buses, and that there could be inconsistencies between surveys along the perimeter. It sounds like the tree where there's some existing trees on a neighbor's property. Oops, I skipped ahead. I'm gonna go back. So the findings from staff are that the alteration request is consistent with the criteria found for alteration of subdivisions in the Mid-Lake Stevens Municipal Code 1418-060. That it's also consistent with the vested PRT criteria found in the previous code section 1444-020, which is what it's vested under, and that the proposal meets all other city requirements when subject to the recommended conditions approval in the staff report. And so ultimately, the city's recommendation is that we recommend approval of the proposed alterations to the preliminary plat, subject to the conditions found in our staff report and subject to the conditions that were part of the original approval for the preliminary plat. And that concludes my presentation. It's fairly short and brief, and I'm just happy to answer any questions that you, Mr. Hearing Examiner, may have, or any other folks may have on the project.
Sure. I guess to start, if you can go back to the new plat as proposed. If I remember right, one of the concerns last year had been, access, and the fact that 72nd and 71st wouldn't have a connection. Is that still technically the case now? Can we zoom in on that sort of upper left corner there? I'm trying to.
Let me see.
Possible.
Yeah, I think you can zoom in. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Ooh,
There we go. So it
actually
looks
got-
like, okay, that helps explain. So there's no actual connection then in this new sort of driveway, how, I don't know how to think about it, but the hammerhead there that would provide access to some of these other lots, is that right?
That's correct. There's no through access to 71st Avenue. If that sounds like what you were asking for,
Yeah.
that's really just a turnaround tract. Well, a turnaround into the tract of
Okay.
995, which is where there'll be some open space and some detention.
And was that a stormwater vault originally underneath there? I don't recall.
That is
Right.
that is my understanding, yes.
Okay. Okay. Just making sure. Okay. And then so really the access hasn't changed in terms of the overall plat itself, correct?
That's correct. If I'm just going to escape out of this. If we go back to the approved, you can see that the road connections really are the same. The access, the connections directly to this public streets are the same. The access off of 71st is still for the same lots. What it changed was really the tract access to some of the lots down off of the cul-de-sac in terms of access changes.
Okay, so there's still direct access to some of these lots. If north is up, I guess to the west is off of 71st, is that right?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
North is, this is oriented with north, to the top, and the west is on your left.
Okay. And then in terms of the native growth protection area that was set aside there in the middle, that's no major change there.
Correct. No major changes to the NGPAs.
Okay, so all the critical areas protected essentially in the same manner that had been proposed.
Yes.
Okay. I guess one thought I had was this issue of vesting. Ultimately, I guess I'll be agnostic about this. And if the city takes the stance that this vests, then, fine with me. But I guess the one concern or thought I had was, if a plat alteration comes in and, toward year 5 of an approved preliminary plat and no construction has been done, I guess A, why would it vest, and B, what are the impacts by doing this plat alteration? Would the applicant get more time to finish their plat, or they still are bound by that original time frame that was provided last year?
No, that's a great question. I don't know that we overly considered the time. I can do some research into that. My initial thought is that they would still be bound to the original 5 years. But I need to look into state code and our code to see how that works, because I want to make sure that that would be correct, but great question.
Sure. And then in terms of vesting, was the thought just because the original preliminary plat was approved under, the original preliminary plat was deemed complete, I think, not the plat, the application was deemed complete in like 2019, I think. And so that was what set the sort of idea of vesting. But then when you come in for an alteration, I guess I don't know if anyone thought this through on staff. I'm just curious what the thought process was. Why would alterations be vested? Why is there any change? I haven't really thought it through one way or the other, just to think that, this could be a problem, that someone could bring up. And I'm just trying to, think it through.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. I haven't thought a ton about it, but I know, so just to backtrack. So I know Sabrina Gassaway was a planner on this project previous. She has now left employment with the city, and I've taken it over, and David as well. And ultimately to say she did a thorough review and review comments to the applicant back and forth. And I've looked through those files and I didn't see any concerns or changes. But I think with the vesting question is that because they did receive preliminary plat approval and hadn't started to begin construction, and they haven't recorded it yet. With this alteration, they're modifying some of the lot sizes and the road access and stuff. But we're looking, when we're doing the review, to make sure that the lots meet those PRD standards that were proposed at the time, the setbacks. And so, looking through the files, and the planner, Sabrina, who had done the review on it, I found everything to be consistent with that. So it's a great question. I guess I don't see anything on our code that says that alterations, would not vest, but it's ultimately something I can think some more about and get back to you on in terms of the city's stance on it, if you'd like. But I think from this for this hearing, our standpoint was that it vested to all the PRD at the time of the plat.
And just to think that through a little further, I guess I'm asking because in this particular instance, I think there have been some serious changes to the extent that the zoning of this particular property has changed, and then the PRD code was superseded or removed. I'm trying to recall exactly what happened with the PRD code in the city.
The city had updated a number of zoning changes, updated code and updated the PRD code, and created some new provisions in there. So that is different than what was reviewed at the time. It was a P plat. Got it.
Okay, well, maybe the applicant has some thoughts on that, and we can ask them here in a sec. I just wanted to ask because it was in my notes. And then let's see, the EDS deviation that was requested, that was approved. And ultimately, I know I ask this almost every time, but that's not my problem. I'm not responsible for reviewing an EDS deviation, correct?
You are not. That is correct. And it was approved. It was included.
Exhibit 14, I believe.
Yeah, yep, that's correct in the staff report. So you are not on the hook for that.
That's all I'm really trying to ensure. So, okay, let's see. Yep, and then finally, I would imagine no major changes to, well, I guess that question doesn't matter, but just so I know the answer, there have been no major changes to the city's comp plan or zoning code since December when this application was deemed complete. Is that accurate?
That's an accurate statement. That is true.
Okay. All right. Great. Well, I think those were the initial questions that I had for city staff. So at this point, then, why don't we turn to the applicant and maybe we'll come back to further discussion at the end. Okay, Ms. Place?
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, so I know we had two people. It looks like David Morse has unmuted himself. So why don't I start with him? And would it be helpful to keep this up, or should we have her stop sharing her screen? What do you think?
No, this is very helpful. Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
We'll leave it up for now. So I'm going to swear you in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
And could you just spell your name for the audio clearly?
Sure.
Explain your role.
David, D-A-V-I-D, Morse, M-O-R-S-E.
And your role in regards to
Sorry. Yes, Senior Land Entitlement Manager for Toll Brothers.
Okay.
Okay, doke. Yeah. So vesting. We crossed that bridge early with city planner, and that was one of the key questions we came up, especially as we were doing our due diligence and we were looking into bulk requirements for each of the lots, and it wasn't comporting with the present code, and we were informed it was vested, and we wanted to make a few changes to the site, and one of them being we were looking at product placement on the lots, and the vested code the vested code allows for 40% lot coverage, whereas the present code allows for 50% lot coverage. So we're okay with the vested code the way it is. We made things work with the 40% lot coverage as opposed to the 50. So we're good with that. I feel like if we had the 50%, We may be able to change the product that we're putting on here, but we went into this and we came out of our feasibility period with a set understandings and correspondence with the city. And so we rested on the vested code.
Got it. So to be clear, you didn't come in and say, hey, we think we should be vested. You said, hey, what would be the status of this? And the former planner involved said, oh, you're vested. So
Yeah.
have your alterations comply with the state of the universe in 2019. Is that sort of an accurate assessment?
Exactly. And really the only issue I think that pertained to, was again, the lot coverage. And she fought us down to the 40% when we were thinking we can maybe go up to 50%.
Got it. And then just in terms of timing, the original plat being approved last April would put you at a 5-year period. In your mind, is that still what would be allowed rather, without?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're okay with that.
Okay.
And the changes we made, and we were hoping to, of course, done this administratively because we felt like it didn't really constitute a major change, but we understood where the city is coming from. There was a few issues with the original plat where the setbacks were represented inaccurately, and they didn't match code. And so that has been corrected here. This allows us to lay out a product type that meshes more consistently with the surrounding neighborhood than what was in the original plat, just because some of the lots were too shallow. They were wide and too shallow. Also coming in on lots 10 and 11, the previous orientation did not present itself well for a friendly neighborhood setting, as the front doors were not facing the main entry drive. And so orienting 10 and 11, do you see how that is? So you come in actually looking at the side yard, the front yards face the backyards, and it's really, it's not ideal. So, and then it kept flipping back here. You can see you come in and front door, front porch, front door, front porch. It looks nice.
Oh, so everything kind of faces on 71st or 72nd. Sorry.
Yeah.
72nd.
Right. So 10 and 11 would face there, and then you turn the corner and they face on road B. The other change was really moving lot 5 south so that it's not separated by the utility track going down to utility and access track going down to track 995, where the stormwater vault is in the northwest corner. And so it again moves it down. So it makes more of a cohesive neighborhood feel. And it creates a greater buffer to the north property line with the neighbor there. So it's a more of a gentle segue to the north. And then in terms of buildability, lot 5 in the old way it was proposed would have to have a grinder pump and an ejector pump to reach the gravity sewer. And we just feel like that's not the best way to develop a site. By moving it further to the south, it's on gravity sewer. So aesthetically and connection with the neighborhood to the north and buildability, moving 5 to the south was a good call.
And out of curiosity, so the access track there above lot 5 that goes over to where the stormwater, et cetera, is, that's not a driveway or anything related to lot 5. I mean, theoretically, the only folks that, so is that gated at times, or what is the?
Well, yeah, so that's a good question, and it's accessible. Our requirement is to do our very best to put an accessible route in to the open space on top of the stormwater vault. And that is our attempt. And I'll yield to Adam Kay, if he can fill in the details of us to do our best to get an accessible route down to the tot lot on 995, the playground there, and then continue it on to the sidewalk on 71st Avenue. That route also, that drive it will be the service drive for the vault for service vehicles. So,
okay, so the idea is service vehicles can use that to access the utilities, but then also this is a pedestrian route that ultimately allows those, you know, in the neighborhood to come from 172nd, access that open space, which has amenities. I think you said a tot lot. So some play equipment, and ultimately over to the sidewalk on 71st. So that it provides pedestrian connectivity to 71st from the neighborhood. Is that right?
that is correct. And if we need to, we could put in, retractable bollards at the east terminus of the service drive.
Okay, yeah, I'd be curious what the city thinks. I guess in my mind, to ensure that it is pedestrian friendly for those in the neighborhood, I think something might be good to do that so that, folks are walking in the neighborhood, don't have to worry about, teenagers or bad drivers turning down that access tract that is predominantly, the majority of the time, I imagine would only be pedestrian access, other than when once or twice a year, a utility truck or something needs to go do work. Is that an accurate sort of thought process?
Yeah, you spot on.
Okay.
And then the other change, of course, pertained to lots 21 through 23 at the east end of the property. And, what we did here is we flipped the lots so that it's back of yard faces back of yard. And then we've given these homes a view out the front door and front porch into the wildlife habitat. We've also included, and we thought this made it for a more usable pedestrian path, if the pedestrian path actually went by everyone's front door and connected to 996. So we feel like that was a better layout than the previous one. Also, the open space requirement for this development is 10%, and we're exceeding that now at 11%. So we're pleased with that. So we feel like it's a better layout.
Got it. So now essentially these homes there in the central portion or eastern portion, you drive down road B to a cul-de-sac, and there's sort of a shared, not a driveway, but access to those two lots that are furthest, or three lots that are furthest east, sort of a flagship lot there at the end. But all of those homes would front within the plat to the road. But also there's this new pedestrian trail that's been delineated so that if I'm walking in the neighborhood, it's clear to me that, get to the end of the cul-de-sac, then there's a trail I can walk on that'll take me to the open space, and I'm not walking through someone's side yard or backyard, and it's clearly delineated.
That's correct. And we think it promotes more of a community feel and neighborhood connectedness.
Okay. Did you have other information you wanted to share, Mr. Morse?
No, we really didn't make that many changes, and I thought the bullet points were a good summation. So thank you very much for hearing us today.
Okay, and did you have other members of your team that you wanted to call on or allow to speak before we see?
Oh, sure. Thank you. Adam, is there anything that you care to add?
I could. Do I have to be sworn in?
Yep, I was going to say, if so, I'll swear you in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
I do.
And could you just clearly spell your name for the audio and explain your role with this project?
Yeah, my name is Adam Kay, Adam Kay. And I am the project manager for Blue Line. We're the consulting engineer working with Toll on the modification and then in the construction drawings as well. So there was a moment there where I thought I would need to chime in, but the question that was asked earlier about the entry to that turnaround to track 995, the answer came up with the answer with bollards. And as you know, to echo what David said, I thought the presentation to what we're proposing was very well done, and it captured pretty much everything. And then you know, David, in follow up, you know, I think overall in comparing the two site plans, this one does have, I think, a little bit more community type feel and connectivity, and keeps all the lots kind of, you know, organized to work well with one another. So that would be it. I really don't have, I guess the access from 71st to 72nd, I believe that was a condition from the original preliminary plat approval that needed to be provided, and it was not shown on the previous site plan. So we've incorporated that on this site plan to show that, yeah, we will plan to make a pedestrian connection from 71st through track 995 and have it be, you know, share with the maintenance road that comes up to 71st that, you know, gets used once or twice a year. So, so yeah, I guess that would be about it, unless anyone has any questions.
Sure. I guess the only question that, looking further at this, so the protected area to the northeast, I guess, which is quite large, now there's a delineated trail. Is there going to be signage or fencing? I don't remember from the original plat approval, but something that'll convey to folks that, yeah, use this trail. This trail is great, but also don't wander off into the wetland or you know, we want to ensure that area is well protected.
Yeah, I will say that in looking at the preliminary plans, there was a location off the cul-de-sac north of the original lot 23 that would indicate, you know, access off of the cul-de-sac, right? That would be open to, connects to the cul-de-sac, that would be open to the public. And you know, we're adding that trail, we're showing that trail connection, right? But I think to answer your question, likely split rail fencing, what you would typically see, you know, at the top, in this case, you know, sensitive steep slopes and the setback off of that, I would imagine that would be included there, and you know, probably appropriate signage too to, you know, indicate that, you know, there's more to this community just beyond this trail. You know, there's this open space behind those lots. So
sure, and the open space is, you know, the having a trail over to the open space is great. I'm just it's the protected steep slope and habitat area. That's where the fencing would theoretically go. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
So yeah, my understanding, my expectation would be that based, you know, in looking at the limits of the tract, you know, along the track line is where you would see, you know, split rail fencing signs posted every 50 feet indicating, you know, delineating, you know, the area that's sensitive to, you know, remain untouched and undisturbed.
Okay. Did you have anything further, Mr. K, that you wanted to share?
I don't think so.
Okay, Mr. Morris, before I go to members of the public, any other folks on your team you wanted to call on or anything else you wanted to share?
No, thanks. I appreciate it, though.
Okay, so in advance, we identified potentially two members of the public. First, I'll call on Adam Gesselman to see if he had any thoughts he wanted to share.
I did have a couple questions.
Sure,
I don't know if
we're
they're
gonna have to swear you in,
Sure.
just the way the process works. Do you swear affirm to tell the truth in any testimony you give here today?
I do.
And could you just clearly spell your name for the audio?
ADAMGESSAMAN.
Okay,
So I was looking back at the original plat and particularly the landscape plan for that plat. And I was noticing that the large border trees were at that time, I think, red cedar, and they've been switched to Sitka spruce. Is that I'm asking because my understanding of Sitka spruce is they grow really fast and tall. And
Okay,
there'd be
so-
a couple planted right 3 feet off the back fence for me.
and you're referring to which property line to help me?
I am looking at the track 998, kind of behind the Cavalier Ridge lot 77. So that kind of right side, the east side of that. And I'm not opposed to trees. I like trees, but one or two very tall, quick growing trees there. My question is, was it switched for a reason? Is there a benefit to that, or was it just a different landscape designer click some different buttons?
Okay, we'll try to get, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna hear from you, and then we'll see if the other member of the public that had signed on was interested in testifying, and then we'll try to get answers
That would be
all
great.
at the end. So
And
I've got, try to get answers on what was the thought process on switching to Sitka on the southern border.
And then my only other comment on that before you leave me and I mute up and go away was I think I see a traffic calming device on here now that was not on the preliminary plat. Is that true? And if so, I'd like to give that a big thumbs up
Okay,
as a member of the public. So
great. That concluded your thoughts. Okay, thank you, Mr. Gussman. And the other name we had was identified as Andrew. Just wanted to see if the person identified as Andrew had testimony they wanted to share.
Nope, I have nothing to add. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for being here. So back to either Mr. Morris or Mr. K or someone they want to identify, but question about the southern boundary and the sort of choice on or potential change in the types of trees, and then whether or not a traffic calming device was added.
So I'll let Adam address the trees, as I was unaware that they had changed. And
So first off, this is for the audio. I just want to point out, this is Mr. Morris speaking now. So Mr. Morris, you had.
thank you. Yeah, Dave Morris. Adam, we can talk about the trees. Yes, a traffic calming device was put in. It was something we should have installed from the beginning. It's what we want, both leaving and coming into the neighborhood. It makes for a very nice physical transition. When you're coming in, you've arrived, and when you're leaving, you just remind everybody you're going through somebody else's neighborhood.
Great. Is that there at the southern kind of entrance connected to the Caballero or Caballero, whatever?
That is correct.
Okay. Great. And
Adam, you
then
want to take the
this is
Yeah.
Mr. K, go ahead.
So good question about the Sitka spruce trees that were used. You did mention a new landscape architect. In this case, we are new on this project. We did not do the original design, and I don't have a definitive answer as to why we switched from one species to another along the south, but because I'm not the landscape architect on the project, but whatever, I defer to their expertise and their experience in terms of laying things out, planting and stuff. But I would say that what's provided on here would be, per Lake Stevens code, and Adam, your statement on the switch is acknowledged, and you know, if it obviously would make sense to go back to what was previously shown, providing that, you know, that also met city code, then we, you know, likely take that into consideration.
So what I would suggest, Mr. K, is there an email address that can be provided that Mr. Gesselman can? I guess my thinking is my role today is a little bit bigger picture, but it sounds like you'd be willing to listen to Mr. Gesselman and say, this is why we thought what we thought. But if you have some thoughts as a neighboring property owner, we're happy to listen to them. And if he has some input, maybe you guys can, so long as it complies with Lake Stevens code requirements, you know, but making neighbors happy is certainly something we'd all like to see. So is that possible, Mr. K?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Could you provide that email now?
I can, if you'd like.
Yeah, Mr. Gesselman, go ahead if you're ready. We'll get this written down. Go ahead, Mr. K.
Okay, I will give you my email address. It's AKAY at thebluelinegroup.com. All one word.
There you go. Okay, so I think that probably, I'm getting head nods from Mr. Gesselman. We certainly, as a member of the public, don't want his email broadcast over on the hearing, but that's your professional email, so I was less worried. But did you have any other thoughts or comments, Mr. K, that you wanted to share?
I don't think so. No, I'm good.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Melissa Place then at this point on behalf of the city. Okay, and Ms. Place, given what you've heard thus far, any final thoughts, comments you wanted to share related to this proposal?
Just to talk about the bollards, I think the city would be fine with bollards in the tract. We would review it at the time of construction plan review and just coordinate with the applicant and the fire department, of course, on the need and the type of bollards. And then in terms of the native growth protection area fencing and signage, I do recall that there's conditions in the original plat approval that are applicable here. And I believe there is a condition of approval about requiring NGPA fencing and signage. And there is also a requirement in our code. So at the time of construction plan review, we'll make sure that those are on the construction plans, that it is protected and it would follow the tract boundaries.
Got it. So the hearing examiner thought about that last time and your code has requirements. So that was already addressed. So correct. Whoever did that back in April of last year was real sharp. So that's great. And then in terms of the vesting issue, I guess in my mind, the only thing I would propose would be a footnote that essentially says, in this particular instance, you know, former staff, you know, I guess I just don't want to create any kind of precedent, not that any decision of mine is precedential, but unless staff has made, you know, is very confident that plat alterations vest, I can leave it alone, but I'd be fine sort of indicating that in this instance, this is what happened and we're all running with it. But
yeah,
you have on that?
Just a thought. Yeah, it's appears David was doing some research while we've been on this hearing, and he did look at RCW 5817.033, and it does not get specific about plat alterations. And so city staff would assume it remains vested to the date of the original application at this time.
Okay.
So I appreciate David's research while we've been doing the hearing. Thank you, David.
That was David Leviton, the planning manager, I assume?
Yes.
Okay. So I essentially, my plan is to sort of just say, you know, it was vested and that's the determination that was made, and any complex legal quandaries related to that are nothing I want to get into. And if nobody talks about it, no appeals, good to go. Does that make sense to the city?
That makes sense to us, yes.
Okay, anything further you wanted to add, Ms. Place?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I don't think I really talked about staff addressing the second written comment that we received earlier this week. And we had a few thoughts on it in terms of the question about the peat bog and drainage. I guess we don't see that as relevant to this specific alteration request, but that it should be looked at a time of construction plan review.
Okay.
And then in terms of, I think his second comment, oh, sorry, the peat bog and the fill, that would be our response to peat bog and fill. And then the question about dump trucks and construction parking and emergency vehicles. I don't know where the applicant's planning the construction entrance, but if it's possible to have one off of 71st, that would help alleviate some of that through the neighborhood. And maybe there's 2 construction entrances planned. I don't know yet, but again, I think I would defer that to construction plan review. And then his fourth comment was just about the tree line. There is going to be a final arborist report that's going to be required as part of the construction plans, and it shall address the off-site trees within 15 feet of the subject property. That was in accordance with the preliminary plat's condition of approval. There's conditions 20 through 26 in that original approval that do get to the tree line, off-site trees, protection. And so I think that would address his concern there.
Right. I remembered the tree issue on the bordering property. And so, yeah, so thank you for clarifying that. I just checked. I'm guessing that comment was probably sent to David Ortman in my office. I don't see it in my own email. But if we can maybe just, without broadcasting my email, I'm pretty sure Ms. Fenrich knows it. If that can be sent directly to me so that I have it,
Yes.
And are sure about that, that'd be great. So I think that covers that. Now that we brought up an additional topic, I do want to see if Mr. Morris had any final thoughts in relation to that additional public comment or the vesting issue.
No comments on the vesting issue. That's the way we had seen it, and that was our understanding. The other issues we're fine to address the construction documents. We've got a thorough geotech report and happy to provide that to the city. Our plan is a net neutral plan. No more houses, no more additional linear footage of roadway. And so we are not changing the methods of construction from what was approved before. We'll endeavor to minimize any impact on the neighborhoods, but this is not something that increased the either impact on the site or off the site. We see it as net neutral, but naturally we want to be, we're leaders in what we do, and we want to be good neighbors as well.
Great. And then I guess finally from Ms. Place, just in terms of process, because this is somewhat unusual to have an alteration. So far, traditionally you would get preliminary plat approval. Ultimately, you would submit for final plat approval. We are prior to final plat. So essentially we're even prior to construction. So what would the sort of next steps, assuming no other alterations occur, just if I was a member of the public wondering, how does this ultimately happen? I think that'd be a real quick primer would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. So since preliminary plat was approved, and then this alteration, if it's approved, we would wait for your decision. Once we get your decision, there is an appeal period associated with it. And then once that appeal period has expired, the applicant is free to submit construction plans to the city, and we will review the construction plans, issue construction plan approval, and then the project would actually get constructed. And then once it's constructed, the city accepts the improvements out on site, the final plat review can begin with the city, and then the final plat would get recorded, and then the lots essentially are able to be for sale. So that's just kind of in a nutshell.
Sure. So when you say the construction would occur, that's the infrastructure, essentially putting in the roads and the stormwater and the sewer, all that. And you would have no homes yet. And then final plat occurs, and then you have homes.
Yes. Yes. So, you're absolutely right. So we cannot accept building permits until the final plat's been recorded, because it doesn't create the lots. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And for our process, a final plat is administrative, but it does have a public comment period associated with it. Years ago, it used to go before council, but it does not any longer. So I just want to note that for the public. But
Got
there
it.
will be public noticing of it.
Okay. I think that concludes all the questions I had. So we're ultimately going to end up with, it looks like 16 exhibits. Does that track with what you had misplaced?
That sounds correct.
Okay, and then if those that have been involved today, members of the public are interested in getting my decision, how would that ultimately occur? Is it put on the website, or do we have information for folks? Do you happen to know?
With our party of record, so they provided a written comment, they will get emailed or mailed the decision. And I believe we're also putting them on the website, but Jenny, can you confirm that for me? She's nodding. That's true. Okay.
Okay,
So we'll put it on the website as well. We'll make sure that people can access it online.
excellent. Okay, great. So I will take all this under consideration and produce a decision here in the next 2 weeks on this plat alteration. And with that, we can conclude today's hearing. I wish everybody safety and good health, and hopefully spring is here. Baseball's back. I heard that much.
There you go.
All right.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you very
everybody.
much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.